The writer strike, which is now getting on 3 months, it's well over 3 months. We're getting on to close to 4 months now for the writer strike that's been going on. Now, we know the horrible way this whole thing began. They couldn't make a deal. And then the two sides didn't even talk to each other for the first 100 days, which is, we talked about this yesterday, completely asinine on everybody's part. Because, and the part that really pisses me off about it, I said this yesterday, but I'll say it again, is you have people who are not members of the AMPTP and people who are not members of the WGA who have nothing to do with their labor dispute, but they can't work because sets are shut down. Members of IATSE, designers, crew people, all out of work. And these two sides couldn't even bother to talk to each other for the first 100 days. That being said, recently, it became public knowledge that the studios finally submitted a counterproposal to the WGA, and the two sides have been meeting. Thankfully, they've been getting together and talking. Well, yesterday, according to this report in the Hollywood Reporter, the studios actually made public the details of their counterproposal, their offer, if you will, to the writers, and laid out for us what those details are. Now, if you're somebody who starts to doze off during numbers and stuff like that, try to muscle through this if you can. For the rest of you, I think we're going to find this pretty interesting. But here's basically what the studios, this is what they're telling us they have put in their offer to the writers, okay? This is the official document that comes from the AMPTP representing the studios. They said this. First of all, they are offering significantly higher compensation. This is the highest wage increase for the WGA in 35 years. That might be more of a negative commentary about how little you have increased their wages over the past 35 years and how big the increase is now. Okay, let's be fair. A compounded 13% increase over a 3-year contract with an increase of 5% in year 1, 4% in year 2, and 3.5% in year 3. On top of wages increase, a 15% increase in minimum week. Remember, the numbers we're about to talk about are minimums. All right? Minimums.
Yeah, Rob.
On top of wage increases, a 15% increase in minimum weekly rates for Article 14 writers, so writers other than story editors or executive story editors, in the first year of this agreement, with further general wage increases in the second and third years of the agreement. This would take a writer from $9,888 a week to $11,371 a week for a guarantee of up to 9 weeks. So if you're working on a project that you're going to get 9 weeks, okay, I'm just going to open up my calculator here because I can't do this off the top of my head. 11,371, multiply that by 9 weeks. Guess what? You just made $102,000 for about 2 months' work. So they're taking the minimums up from $9,800 to minimum $11,371. Now, let's say you're working on a slightly longer series, okay? So you are now going to get a minimum weekly guaranteed. That increases from $8,240 to $9,000, let's just say $9,500 a week. Okay, so that's on a 15-week thing. So let's say you're working at $9,500 a week and you work on a 15-week show. You just made $142,000 for working under 4 months, less than 1/3 of the year. How many of you would love to have a job where you get to work 1/3 of the year and then take a whole bunch of months off?
Me.
Yeah, many of us. You get work 4 months and then take 8 months off and then be like being a professional football player without having to, brutally put your body through a whole hell of a lot of stuff that the professional football players have to.
Well, one thing though, this isn't just like your staff writers, right? Because this is Article 14 writers. So are those writers who are also like the showrunners or producers or whatever?
It gets to that.
Okay.
There's more details to come.
Oh.
So, and then of course, if you're going to be working really long-term, like say nearly half the year, the minimums go from $7,412 to $8,524 a week. All right. So then they address high budget SVOD residual issues. Now this is streaming video on demand. All right. So this is like when I go online and don't watch something, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob, if you know better, not when I go online to watch Mario Brothers stream for free on Peacock, but rather when I go on to iTunes movie library and rent for $7 or $8, right? Their residuals go up. A total worldwide domestic and foreign residuals increase from $72,667 per episode to $87,556 per episode. So that put in there. Now, one of the big concerns that the writers had, and I 100% agree with the writers on this, one of their big concerns is with shrinking to non-existent writers' rooms, there's no room for new writers, for tomorrow's writers to cut their teeth and get experience. Normally in a writer's room, you got your showrunner, and then they'll bring on some really seasoned, experienced, proven writers in their writer's room, and then bring in a couple of mid-level writers, and then one or two new writers to make sure that they're cutting their teeth, bring fresh ideas, and set up the future writers, right? And with the shrunken writer's room that the studios wanted, the writers have been very, very concerned that new writers are going to have no way to get into the business, because if you can only hire 3 writers in a writer's room, you're always going to go get the most experienced, most proven talent. No one's going to be able to develop it. Well, they said this. The studio said, a new structure to train writers to become the showrunners of tomorrow by guaranteeing the length of employment and requiring that at least 2 mid-level writers chosen by the showrunner be assigned to production. The APTP is committed to allowing the showrunner to select at least 2 mid-level writers to be assigned to productions who are each guaranteed at least 20 weeks of employment unless the production period is shorter, so on and so forth. All right. Then new compensation structure for a development room, because this is another big issue that the writers had, and I 100% agreed with the writers on this. But now the studios are saying writers will be guaranteed a minimum of 10 weeks of employment, and for Article 14 writers, other than story editors and executive story editors, the week-to-week rate of pay will increase by 43.8% over the current rate, raising the rate from $9,888 per week to $14,214 a week. Then they get on to landmark protections for writers surrounding the use of generative artificial intelligence. This was another big issue that the writers had, and 100% I agreed with them on this. A writer will not be disadvantaged if any part of the script is based on generative AI produced material, so that the writer's compensation, credit, and separated rights will not be affected by the use of generative AI produced material. What they're basically saying is this. The studio is saying, we still want to be able to take advantage of AI here and there if we want to, but if we do, it will have zero impact on the credit that a writer gets, zero impact on the compensation that a writer gets, zero impact on the work that the writer does. So they're basically saying, look, we still want to be able to use AI if there's a particular circumstance where it'll help us out. But the studios are now making assurances we will in no way let that affect the writer. That's what they're claiming, at any rate. Then another big thing that we've heard Chris Carr talk a lot about this, that there's no transparency from the streamers about what kind of numbers they get. Well, the studios have made this commitment. Increased data transparency to reflect that the internet has changed the dynamics of the entertainment business. For the first time, viewership data in the form of quarterly confidential reports is to be provided to the WGA that will include total SVOD view hours per title. This increased transparency will enable the WGA to develop proposals to restructure the current SVOD residuals regime in the future. So they're at least not going all the way, but they're at least giving some commitments to having some transparency. Quarterly reports, 4 times a year, to go to the WGA. So they're not going to make the numbers public. They're not going to let everybody know them, but they're making, at least it's a little bit of a step. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money. Did you know that the average person has around 12 paid subscriptions, and they might not even remember to subscribing to half of those? If you have no idea just how much you're spending each month, you need Rocket Money. It's this great app that tracks all of your expenses so you know exactly where your money is going. I recently just found out that over 80% of people have subscriptions that they've completely forgotten about. Seriously, think about how many free trials you subscribe to that you just probably never canceled. And that's why I'm such a big fan of Rocket Money, because I was one of those people. When I signed up to Rocket Money, I was stunned to find out that a gym I had belonged to in another city I lived in, I had still been paying my dues to for over 2 years. Also, that music subscription service I use, yeah, I forgot I was subscribed to 2 other ones. That's where Rocket Money comes in, because Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. With over 3 million users and counting, Rocket Money customers have saved on average of $720 a year. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Campea. That's rocketmoney.com/Campea. rocketmoney.com/Campea. Rob, I don't know that this is going to be enough for the WGA, but it does represent a significant shift from the AMPTP from where they were. They've absolutely made some pretty significant concessions here. What do you think about this? And does them at least taking this step give you hope that they can get closer together?
Well, I think the thing that it shows me right away is that at least they're serious about negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it shows, I think, a part on the AMPTP, a willingness to realize that this is important, that these are numbers that are real numbers. It's not a pittance. Some of the things, the SVOD, the idea of streaming stuff, I still think that there needs to be more refinement there. I also, before I give definitive answers to something like this, I'd have to have the rebuttal from the WGA and read that. But the things like generative AI, what's really interesting is we've seen that recently, I think a judge said that anything that's AI generated is not copyrightable.
Oh, yes. That was a major, we talked about that yesterday.
A
It's
major thing. So if you're using generative AI to write a script, will you be able to use that script and copyright that script?
You can use it, but you can't copyright it. And you and I could go, oh, that's a nice script you developed. We're going to take it and use it too.
Yes.
You got no protections.
And there's no protections at all. And I would say this, I don't pay, if I'm a producer, I don't pay a writer to use generative AI. I don't care what kind of a tool it is. I would expect a writer to be right, because as soon as a writer uses something like generative AI, that tool writes. It does your job for you. And if you really want to be considered a writer, I would say the writers also have to have an obligation to not use generative AI in their work. And I think it's great. Both sides should agree. Using generative AI muddies the copyright issue. That alone is enough for me to say, as a producer, no. No, I will not, we will not use generative AI. And I think that's going to be true. I mean, costume designers, you can have AI design a costume for you now. And a costume designer doesn't want that. A costume designer, that's their job, is to design a costume. Generative AI can spit out 10 different costumes with a prompt. And I think, but a costume in a movie, if somebody's, it also is copyrightable. All that stuff is copyrightable. So I think it's really interesting if movie studios come down and say, well, we need to own our material and we need to make sure 100% of the time it's owned. Maybe
now,
generative.
the WGA, by the way, has issued a statement since then. And I got to say that while I have been completely on board with everything except a residual, I'm still very iffy on the issue of residuals.
Yes.
That being aside, the other 12 things they've asked for, I'm 100% on the writer's side. But the Writers Guild, I should say, have taken this really annoying approach of saying, we're going to litigate this in the court of public opinion. And we're going to just badmouth and insult, and we're going to do all this kind of stuff when, guess what? The public opinion means nothing here. The studios don't care what the public opinion is on this. They're going to do what's good for business. And you crying about it isn't going to, I mean, you know what? Here's the real problem. They have some real legitimate issues, some real legitimate gripes. And when they come out and whine and cry about it, instead of just presenting the facts, it kind of undermines the legitimacy of their position. You know what I mean? But so anyway, the WGA has come out and they said, basically, this isn't the AMPTP being serious about wanting to bargain. This is just them posturing. They're not serious and all that kind of stuff. And again, what does making a statement like that publicly do to help things along? Put out a statement that says, we appreciate that the AMPTP has put this out. However, while we appreciate the concession, we are still far apart. They have offered this, but we stand firm that we need this. They have offered this, but we stand firm that we need, like, just put out the data, put out the information. Let us know where you are. Quit the soapboxing and whatever, and just tell us, like, okay, you're asking for what exactly? You're offering what exactly? Let us see how far apart you are and where you guys can come to a compromise.
I completely agree with you.
And so, I don't know, like, how much longer do you think this thing's going to stretch out? I mean, at least they're talking again, which
That's
they
what she
weren't
said.
doing for a while.
Yeah, I
I couldn't.
yeah, but no, I look, I agree with you. And the thing that I think about is, like, you and I think we're on the side of the writers, obviously, all film and television, especially, John, in a year where the Emmy Awards, both in comedy and drama, are so strong. You know, it shows what great writing means to our entertainment. And to have that many great TV shows. I mean, what is Succession? It's a show about people in rooms talking. It's all written. And we have, in both comedy and drama, we see every day, we watch shows every day that show how important good writing is. So we're both on the side of that. But like you said, we also have to have good faith negotiations, and we don't want an industry torn asunder where the writers hate the producers and the producers hate the writers. You have to show being conciliatory and negotiating in good faith.
Right. And being financially reasonable.
And yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Because, like, here's the other thing too. I'm getting so tired of reading these comments because I see them all the time. It's like, good, let the writer starve. They've been writing nothing but crap anyway for years. And I say, oh, okay, time out. You got any favorite shows? Oh yeah, I love this, and this. Guess what? All of them written by WGA members.
Yeah, exactly.
You got a favorite movie? Oh yeah, I love this, and this. Guess what? All of them written by WGA members. So we don't underestimate how good the writing can be, and don't underestimate how bad writing can be. And we're not going to get better writing until we get the WGA with a new contract and working again. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.